Episode 3 of Ultimate Doom is where the game finally begins to embrace its hell aesthetic completely. It throws more abstract level design at the player, new level concepts, and has a more wild time of it. Unlike Knee Deep in the Dead and the Shores of Hell, Inferno really isn't tied to a base aesthetic, so there's a lot more experimentation here. The good news for the player is that this leads to some incredibly fun levels. The bad news is that not all of these levels are consistent. Where does Inferno rise to the challenge and where does it fall down? Let's dive in and talk about each of the levels. If you have any strong opinions regarding Inferno and its levels, I'd love to hear them. And remember, these are just my opinions. I'm not speaking for the community or anyone else, I'm just giving my opinions on these levels from the many years that I've been playing Ultimate Doom. Let's keep the Doom conversation going, and let's dive into Inferno. For my money, Hellkeep is an incredibly underwhelming starting point for Inferno. The wide open room you enter initially is largely barren, and feels more like it's there for show than actual fun. The level just doesn't feel that fun, there's barely any exploration, and it basically feels like a series of rooms that you're expected to just wander through and complete. It does the bare minimum that a first level in an episode should do, and relies on some cheap tricks. Tricks like making the player fight through a single file corridor filled with pinkeys that you must defeat in order to pass through. Things like having an imp room stuffed to the brim with enemies and not giving you much in the way of ammo to deal with that after fighting all those pinkeys earlier. On easier difficulties, these points are mitigated by the fact that these enemies aren't really there, but on higher difficulties it just feels a bit unbalanced. It really feels like this level was slapped together in an afternoon. Not a great start. I'm throwing the console version of Hellkeep in here as I feel it delivers better on the promise that its counterpart simply falls short on. This level feels similar at points but ultimately is its own beast. The rooms are stuffed with enemies, but you're able to find a shotgun in the opening room, as well as a plasma rifle and chain gun if you're willing to go hunting. There are a few monster closets here and there, and a few nasty surprises if you end up using too much ammo, but ultimately I feel like this is a much more complete level than its namesake on PC. There's more progression options, with keycards and weapons to be found, but not just this, a lot of the battles feel much more intense, like thought was actually put into them. And yes, the ammo count can get very low on this level, it is very stingy with that, but ultimately I just think it's a much more fun introduction to Inferno, and it's one that I think people should go out of the way to experience, compared to the other version of this level. I think Slough of Despair is a very hectic level, and it's got a really unique feel to it. The small maze-like passageways create an arena where you'll be carefully darting around every corner, trying not to get picked at by enemies. Luckily there's a bunch of weapons hidden around, from a chain gun to a plasma rifle. It's got some fun little battles as well, because there's quite a few ambushes in that maze. It's chaotic but in a good way, and one that rewards the curious, but is smart enough to let experienced players make their own way through it in no time at all. It ticks a lot of boxes and delivers something that's not really been delivered up to this point in Ultimate Doom, and I like seeing that. It's an abstract level, but it's one that works well within the confines of Ultimate Doom, and ultimately I don't hate it. Plus you can skip through it in about 20 seconds if you really know what you're doing, so it's really not that painful. A very intense start on higher difficulties gets the blood rushing on Pandemonium, as you're charged down by pinkies and imps within seconds of entering the level. There are weapons dotted around such as the shotgun and chain gun, but you'll have to be hungry to get them if you really want to mow down those enemies quickly. After this initial onslaught, things calm down considerably, and the level gives way to a challenging but overall fairly straightforward series of encounters. There's a lot of optional rooms for you to explore, and a ton of different type of enemies, and it isn't really that difficult to find the BFG to wipe out all of these enemies if you really want to. Honestly, this is a nice little adrenaline boost in the middle of this episode. Some tight level design as well as some well thought out encounters really help to elevate this one beyond the average. And it's another level that doesn't really outstay its welcome. Overall, really fun. House of Pain starts strong by offering the player optional areas and allowing them to choose the path which they want to go on. You can get a shotgun, you can get a berserk pack, or you can just run down the middle and head to the main bulk of the level. Once you've dodged those crushers and grabbed that invulnerability, you can mow through the middle part of this level with absolute ease. It's incredibly lethargic to be able to just beat up on the Baron of Hell, Lost Souls, and even a few Cacodemons if you're feeling really bold. Sadly, things sort of go downhill once you go through the blue door. Switch puzzles are never really that fun, and this level throws a really boring one right at you. You'll find yourself just randomly bashing buttons and kinda hoping that the door that you want to open actually opens. The room with the Cacodemon and the Baron with the pain floor just doesn't work for me, and then that final room with the pinkies lower down feels really unfair to the player because you're kind of forced to dive in there and kind of hope that they don't munch you on the way down. Weak ending, sadly. Unholy Cathedral is a perfectly okay level that's let down entirely by a central teleporter puzzle that falls down. In terms of execution, I can imagine that more than a few new players and returning players have gotten trapped in that central room, being constantly teleported back into the centre because they can't work out where they're meant to go. There are a few visual clues to help you out, but ultimately I just think the strength of this central puzzle isn't that strong at all. Outside of this, there are actually a few well-placed encounters. A few of the rooms have some really fun moments where you'll be battling against a horde of enemies and trying to track down some of the more powerful weapons in the game. It can be really fun, this level. There's a really great onslaught at the end of the level where you can grab a BFG. It's a really fun way to end the level. It's just a shame that that central teleporter puzzle really brings down the whole thing. Mount Erebus is a fan favourite, and it's kind of easy to see why. It's a wide level with lots of spaces to explore and lots of enemies that can chase you through the level, from shotgun guys through to barons and a few Cacodemons as well. This one presents a very upfront challenge to those who are willing to go hunting. My only real nitpick with this level is that an essential teleporter, which leads to the blue key, is hidden behind a burly marked wall. But ultimately this is a level that challenges the player to remain on their toes and throws up a lot of challenges that require actual exploration and thinking. Not everyone will love this one, and I can understand why, but for me it's probably the most open and exciting level to explore in Ultimate Doom, and it's a level that really knows how to have fun with the concepts of Doom's level designs. This level could only really exist in Inferno, and I think it's the strongest level in Inferno. So yeah, I think it's worthy of all that praise that it gets. If Mount Erebus pushes Doom's level design in a positive way, I think Limbo pushes it in the completely opposite direction. From the word go, you're charged down with shotgunners and pinkies. If that doesn't rub you the wrong way, then the maze with repetitive narrow corridors leading to the red key, followed by a teleporter puzzle that will basically have you searching every single corner of this level, trying to work out what the hell you're meant to be doing, will rub you the wrong way. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate what they were trying to do here, but the execution really does leave a lot to be desired. The level doesn't even try to tell you which teleporters you need to be going in order. There's no visual cues. A lot of these teleporters are well hidden and well out of the way, in areas with pain floors as well. The trial and error approach to this level will simply prove too aggravating to many new players, and the benefit that this teleporter puzzle brings isn't that great compared to how much frustration I reckon this has caused over the years. A very sour penultimate level, and I just don't think it's that good. The final level of the original Doom trilogy of episodes really is a letdown. This level is basically a large single room with a tiny hut in the centre. There's a spider mastermind and a handful of enemies that you'll be dealing with, running around and gunning, trying to avoid that spider mastermind's chain gunfire. Unlike Tower of Babel, there's no atmosphere in this level design. It's about as simple as one can make a Doom level, and very quickly you'll find that as long as you grab enough ammo from around the edges of the room, you can pretty much hide and shoot at the spider mastermind from around corners. It's a real wet fart of a level, and honestly it doesn't deliver on any of the promise that this level should have had. If you think I'm being harsh on this one, remember that this was the final level in the original Doom. This was the final level, this was the final boss, and this is a letdown. Warren's is the first joke level in Ultimate Doom, and I'd argue it actually delivers strongly on this premise, and actually makes one of the worst levels in Inferno a lot better because of it. The joke here is that the first half of the level is exactly the same as Hell Keep. Same enemies, same layout, a few little items have been moved around, but other than that you wouldn't really notice anything. Try and exit the level the same way you did last time and you'll be face down with a Cyberdemon battle, and it's fun. From here you have to head back to the start of the level and you'll notice that there's a bunch of changes occurring as you're making your way through. The first time you see this, it's actually really fun, and it's nice to see how the basic level design that I was originally critiquing was changed and warped to accommodate these new encounters. I'm not a huge fan of the room stuffed full of shotgunners at the level's end, which I feel is a bit cheap and kind of just there to whittle down the player's health, but this is a much better realised level than Hell Keep, at least to me. At its core, Inferno is an episode that really tries to experiment with incredibly varied levels. The end result of this is an episode that lurches from great to confusing and back again in the span of several outings. This isn't to say I hate this episode, far from it. I think it's arguably got the most unique character among the original Doom episodes, and I think that when the experimentation works, its levels stand above what came before. Mount Erebus is a testament to this. It works so well and is designed as a fun playground for the player to get lost in. But sometimes that experimentation comes at the detriment of the player experience, and it brings the entire episode down a few steps. You can feel this in Unholy Cathedral, where the best parts of the level are when you're actively avoiding the central teleporter puzzle. I think it breaks completely on Limbo though, where I feel that the limitations of the Doom engine and the abstract nature of Peterson's level design leads to an unholy mess that punishes the player far more than I think it should. Then you get levels like Dis and Hell Keep, arguably the two most important levels as they serve as the introduction to Hell and the final stage in the original game, both of which feel incredibly undercooked. These levels struggle to make an impact and feel more like they were quickly designed to meet level quotas than actually adding anything to the Doom experience. Overall, I think Inferno is a fun time, but an inconsistent one. It's an episode that pushes itself at times, maybe a bit too far. It's definitely not in the same league as Knee Deep in the Dead, and even falls behind the Shores of Hell for consistency. In terms of quality, there is a lot here, but it's let down by some levels that really do stink out the barrel. It does remain a fun time though, and it does have some of the best levels in Ultimate Doom contained within it. What are your opinions on Inferno? I'd love to hear them.